This is All India Radio. We now bring you a radio report on the function organized earlier today by ISRO to mark the birth centenary year of renowned scientist Professor Satish Dhawan.
The man who shaped the Indian space program, Professor Dhawan, was a passionate teacher, a demanding research guide, and a pragmatic engineer, known as the father of experimental fluid dynamics research in India. Satish was born on September 25, 1920 in Srinagar, Kashmir. His parents came from professional families, and his father, Devi Dayal, retired as a respected judge of the High Court in Lahore, now in Pakistan. Satish graduated from the University of Lahore with an unusual combination of degrees, a BA in Physics and Mathematics, 1938, an MA in English Literature, 1941, and a BE with honours in Mechanical Engineering, 1945. In 1946, he travelled on a government scholarship to the United States, where he obtained an MS from the University of Minnesota, 1947, and then an MS in Aeronautical Engineering, 1949, and a PhD in Aeronautics and Mathematics, 1951, at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, USA, under Professor Hans V. Leitman. Professor Dhawan left the United States in 1951 to join the Indian Institute of Science as a scientific officer. He rose rapidly to become professor and head of the Department of Aeronautical Engineering in 1955 and in 1962 director of the institute. An IISc director from 1962 to 1981, Dhawan devoted much time to the establishment of a number of new scientific programs. Dhawan was on a well-earned sabbatical at Caltech in 1971-1972 when he was called upon to take over India's fledgling space program after its visionary founder Vikram Sarabhai passed away at an early age. Although India's space program owes its birth to the vision of Vikram Sarabhai, it was Dhawan who lent substance to his vision and built ISRO into the world-class body that it is today.
Considering the problems of India and the fact that it's only the application of science and technology which can resolve them, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, the great scientist and imaginative leader, considered how advanced science and technology could be applied for developmental purposes. One of the projects which he conceived of sometime in 1967 was to see if satellite communications can assist the development of our country. He proposed that we use this new technology of mass communications for broadly educational and developmental purposes for specially directed areas of our country.
Dhawan agreed, and a new structure was set up involving a policy-making space commission, an administrative arm of the government called the Department of Space, and a science and technology agency called the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, all three headed by one person. Thus began a parallel career track for Dhawan, who continued to be the director of IISc at Bangalore. He convinced the government that this arrangement would bring synergy to the space program. On a token salary of 1 rupee per month, he became the chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, and the chairman of the Indian Space Commission in the year 1972 and continued up to 1984. His major scientific and technical contribution to the space programs our Operational Multipurpose Indian National Satellite Project, INSAT, National Natural Resources Management System, NNRMS, and final configuration of India's Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, PSLV, the dependable workhorse of ISRO.
Two new projects, the Advanced Launch Vehicle or the Augmented SLV and the Polar Launch Vehicle. The first of these will launch about 150 kilograms into orbit. The PSLV, which is really a large one, will be able to place about 1,000 kilograms into sun-synchronous orbit. The time frames are roughly 84 and 85 for the augmented vehicle and hopefully 88 for the PSLV.
Dhawan's list of accolades include Distinguished Alumni Award in 1969 from Caltech and an IISc Distinguished Alumni Award in 1981. He was elected to the Indian Academy of Sciences in 1970 and served as its president during 1977 to 1979. In 1978, he was elected to both the U.S. National Academy of Engineering and the Indian National Science Academy. He became a foreign honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1972. India honored him with the Padma Bhushan in 1971, Padma Vibhushan 1981, the Indira Gandhi Award for National Integration 1999, acknowledging him as one of our foremost scientists, teachers and national builders who is deeply concerned with the solution of national problems through the use of science. He received several honorary doctorates, including one from the Cranfield Institute of Technology, United Kingdom. Following his death, the Spaceport of India at Shar, Sriharikota, Andhra Pradesh, was renamed as the Satish Dhawan Space Center, Shar.
Professor Satish Dhawan was a passionate teacher, a demanding research guide, and a pragmatic engineer, renowned as the father of experimental fluid dynamics research in India. Professor Dhawan shaped the Indian space program based on the broad vision of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Professor Dhawan also took charge of the Indian space program as Chairman ISRO in 1972 and continued till 1984 while he was continuing as Director IISc. He was also the Chairman of the Space Commission and Secretary to the Government of India in the Department of Space. His major scientific and technical contribution to the space programs are operationalizing multi-purpose Indian National Satellite Project, INSAT, National Natural Resources Management System, NNRMS, and the final configuration of India's Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, PSLV, the dependable workhorse of ISRO. Following his demise in 2002, the Spaceport of India at Sriharikota was renamed after him as the Satish Dhawan Space Center, SHAR. Earlier today, a function was organized in virtual mode to mark the centenary year of his birth, with a special message by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi. The program was live-streamed on the ISRO website and other social media platforms. The program began with floral tributes to the portrait of Professor Satish Dhawan by Chairman ISRO and other invitees. The presidential address was delivered by Dr. K. Sivan, Secretary, Department of Science and Chairman ISRO.
Today, we are here to celebrate the birth centenary of one of the greatest ISRO luminaries who was responsible for giving shape to the vision of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai on how the space program should be organized and conducted. Professor Satish Dhawan stands as one of the tallest stalwarts in shaping the future of not only ISRO but also the Indian Institute of Science. If you talk about the growth of space program in India and how ISRO transformed from an experimental space agency in the 1960s and 70s to an operational space agency in the late 90s and early 2000, the major factor has been how the space programs have been linked to the national requirements and how the space program has been organized within Department of Space and ISRO. Professor Dhawan realized that for ISRO to grow and to deliver on its potential, it was necessary to redefine itself within the government. For this, he brought ISRO under the Government of India and created the Department of Space. He also realized that a different structure for functioning of this new department was essential. He created the Policy Making Space Commission along with the financial powers under the Prime Minister. It was Professor Dhawan who emphasized that the offices of Chairman ISRO, Chairman of Space Commission and Secretary Department of Space should be headed by a single person for ensuring effective integration of conceptualization and funding of the ISRO program. He also set up ISRO headquarters for the purpose of linking ISRO programs and projects with decision makers. This particular architecture that Professor Dhawan designed was original and innovative. ISRO's continuing success is visible proof of this robustness of this design. When Professor Dhawan took the charge at that time, activities at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center were fragmented with different groups working independently on a variety of problems and projects, some of them even competing with each other. He brought in Dr. Brahma Prakash and gave him a mandate to restructure VSSC into a dynamic structure capable of producing results repeatedly. Segregation of projects and system development agencies happened during this period, and VSSC was transformed into a great technology center and later became the mother center for many ISRO centers. From the beginning, Professor Dhawan insisted on a significant role for indigenous industry in the projects of ISRO. Today, hundreds of industrial units, both in the public and private sector, manufacture a wide range of space quality hardware for ISRO. All of this resulted in ISRO not only delivering on the satellite, launch vehicle and space application front, but ISRO also successfully executed a series of space science missions like Chandrayaan-1, Mars Orbiter mission, as well as Astrosat mission. These missions have yielded path-breaking results of great scientific value. Professor Satish Dhawan birth centenary celebration is coming at a time when India, the various stakeholders, entrepreneurs and investors are eagerly looking at new opportunities in space business. In the recent space sector reforms, for unlocking the potential of space sector in India is a fitting tribute to Professor Satish Dhawan in formalizing a mechanism which allows new entrants to play a role in the space sector. In summary, the future is exciting. ISRO has great projects in the pipeline. Private sector will bring greater diversity to the space industry, leading to expansion. I once again thank you all for being here in paying tribute to Professor Satish Dhawan and in supporting, encouraging and guiding ISRO in all its endeavors. Thank you and Jai Hind.
The prestigious Professor Satish Dhawan Memorial Lecture was also delivered on this occasion. In his address, Dr. K. Kasturi Rangan, former Chairman ISRO, said,
First of all, I should express how privileged I am to be a part of this deliberations today, celebrating the birth centenary of one of the most illustrious leaders in science and technology that this country has seen in the recent times, and whom we were privileged to have as the chairman of ISRO for more than a decade. And I am really privileged additionally because of the fact that Dr. Shivan told me to share this forum where the Prime Minister is also giving his address. And I'm aware of the tremendous interest the Prime Minister has expressed at all times. When he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, now he's the Prime Minister of India. But his interest in his space, his interest in promoting space and its usefulness among the society is something which is unparalleled. So it's natural that today we are going to hear from the Honorable Prime Minister some of his own perceptions about how the space will take India into the 21st century and play its own rightful role. I'd like to thank the Chairman, Dr. Shivan, for this very unique opportunity that he has extended to me. And I'm also honored that I'm speaking in the company of people like Professor Narasimha, Dr. Josna Dhawan, Dr. Prahlad, and also my other colleagues like Dr. Kiran Kumar, Suresh, and many others from the ISRO community. So thank you very much for this thing. I cannot start a little narration about Professor Dhawan without again recapitulating the kind of academic credentials that he has, because it's so unique. And I've not seen that kind of a thing with many people whom I have come across. And therefore, I just want to, even at the expense of repeating what has already been said in the video, I will say he had a very distinguished and an unusual academic career. He had a BA in physics and mathematics, as was mentioned, a Master of Arts in English Literature, a BE in Mechanical Engineers, BE Honours with Mechanical Engineering, then MA in Aeronautics, PhD in Aeronautics and Mathematics from Caltech, a student of being a student of Professor Hans Liebman, who was a student of Professor Theodor von Karman. So you can see the lineage of Professor Dhawan in terms of aeronautics, the father of American aeronautics, and he is the father of Indian aeronautics. So there is this extraordinary journey in academic career that Professor Dhawan had. This translates into many multifaceted personality that he was: a lovable teacher, an intense researcher, an innovative technologist, an able institution builder, and an excellent administrator, academic administrator, all at the same time, but yet distinctly visible. To me, above all this, he was an extraordinary strategist who had the ability to look at a complex problem at the nitty-gritty level, somebody who could really probe deeper and deeper into a problem, dissect it, examine the multiple options leading to an optimal solution. This is what he brought to bear very effectively to address ISRO's unique issues. And many of us, to the extent possible, learned out of this methodology something which proved to be very, very effective and useful in our later years. Among other things, the type of leadership that Professor Dhawan gave to ISRO was one of absolute delegation to ensure appropriate empowerment at different levels, unambiguous way of identifying accountability, insistence of high level of transparency, and ethical principles in context of individual responsibilities. These were a part of a culture that ISRO has imbibed, thanks to Professor Dhawan, his outlook on these matters of individual responsibilities, how we used to do this. And I want to say, with respect to the leadership and that he gave and absolute delegation, I only recall that when he was asked to chair the Aryabhatta project, the only project where he chaired the management board, he never chaired any of the boards of ISRO, any of the councils of ISRO, any of the management, other type of structures in ISRO. He was always the chairman of ISRO. Only in Aryabhatta, very reluctantly accepted this, because he said that this will be the first milestone for ISRO to demonstrate India's prowess in space. And maybe it would be appropriate that I have a visibility virtually on a continuing basis, and therefore I could chair this particular board. But I'm not setting any precedents in this. And true to his words, in the rest of the decade, he never accepted any position in ISRO other than being the chairman of ISRO. Very extraordinary, and his conviction and approach to dealing with management. I would like to go now into the major things that there's a very long list of things that Professor Dhawan did in his 12 years as chairman of ISRO. I am going to give you a little bit of the whole thing simply because of the fact that shows the breadth and depth of the things that happened during the period of 12 years, number one. And second, this was the period where ISRO was just getting a fledgling, as was rightly put, into an organization which was fledgling. It needed stabilization, it needed to bring sustainability, and therefore the structuring that we need to do, the activity that need to be initiated, and the accountability that we need to bring in the kind of activity that we were undertaking, they were all critical. So he addressed the multiple dimensions of ISRO: science, technology development, use of space for applications, institutional mechanism to achieve the goals, as well as the infrastructure that needs to be built parallelly to make sure that we have the necessary ability to carry out the space program through both internal infrastructure creation as well as the work with industries and other institutions in the country. On the science he promoted, he strongly believed that science is one of the key elements to promote this kind of activities, which may be high technology, which may have a lot of application oriented, but science always demands high level of thinking, high level of technology, sophistication, perfection. These kind of things need to be embedded into the mainstream of the program. It can make a lot of difference. So science cannot be devolved from the rest of the activities in space. He supported the programs of atmospheric sciences, solar system studies, astronomy, it was mentioned about it. And in fact, these initiatives on astronomy, the one that gave us the world famous observatory today, the AstroSat, establishment of major ground facilities and laboratories, SSPL and things of that kind, continuing support for rocket flight from Cuba to understand the upper atmospheric region about the geomagnetic equator, conducting flying instrumentation with balloons, and also with satellite-based sciences. So this was a very broad agenda he supported for science. On technology, of course, one of the important things that Sarabhai had left was the SLV-3 development, the first stage vehicle. Sarabhai and both Professor Dhawan both believe that in autonomous access to space is extremely critical for a country like India. We can build satellites. If we get stuck up just because we don't have an agreement to launch it, then we are in trouble in conducting space. So autonomy in space, autonomy access in space was one of the critical aspects of the policy of ISRO. Fructification of SLV-3 was very critical in this. He, together with Dr. Kalam and other senior engineers of ISRO, fructified SLV-3 as India's demonstrated capability in understanding how to access space in an autonomous way. This, of course, led to the ASLV. Professor Dhawan himself beautifully explained what that ASLV derivative from SLV is. And then it led to the configurational aspects of a more operational vehicle, an operational vehicle that can put a remote sensing satellite into polar orbit, or a geosynchronous satellite or communication and broadcasting into a geosynchronous transfer orbit, which is the GSLV. Both of them, the study of configurational aspects, optimality of the configurational aspect, the capability that they should have, they were all defined to be fairly high level of detail during the time when he was the chairman. And of course, he started the programs following the Aryabhatta, which is the first satellite that was built under his supervision. As I told, he was the chairman of the Aryabhatta Management Board. He also continued that program through Bhaskara, an experimental remote sensing satellite, Apple, an experimental communication satellite, and also initiating the work with companies abroad to bring in an operational capability into multi-purpose remote sensing, multi-purpose communication and broadcasting through the INSAT-1 system, even as we started laying the groundwork for the second generation INSAT system, as well as building an operational remote sensing. So these were all serious matters which today, if we say that how ISRO is able to carry on a sustainable basis with certain missions like INSAT and IRS, the foundations of these were laid during the time when he did the experimental systems. He, from a proof of concept, he went into an experimental system like Bhaskara and Apple. From an experimental system, he went into an operational. That was a 3 to 4 step process, very carefully planned and exceptionally well executed with appropriate inputs in terms of infrastructure and resources which were built to the requirement at that particular point.
Thereafter, Professor Rodam Narasimha, Professor T.S. Prahalad and Dr. Jyotsna Dhawan spoke on their association with Professor Dhawan. A special photo album of Professor Satish Dhawan was also released by Dr. K. Sivan, Secretary Department of Science and Chairman ISRO. Thereafter, Dr. K. Sivan read the special message by Honorable Prime Minister of India Shri Narendra Modi on this occasion.
I am reading whatever message we received from Honorable Prime Minister of India. It is greatly heartening to know about the birth centenary celebrations of a great scholar, scientist and leader such as Professor Satish Dhawan, and an honor to write about him. The Indian space program is a dinosaur of the world's eyes today. There is great excitement about our talent, technology and the giant strides that we have taken over the years. However, a tree can spread far and wide only if its roots are strong and deep. It is only by resting upon the shoulders of great people that India's space program has achieved the heights it has. Professor Dhawan was a key figure in India's rise in this domain. At a time when the barriers for knowledge exchange were much bigger, precedents were very few, and when constraints were many, visionaries like Professor Dhawan took great risk and responsibilities and forged an original path for India. The path was not easy, but Professor Dhawan was never the kind of person who would settle for less. For him, even the sky did not seem like a limit to India's prowess. We could keep talking about his pioneering work in the expansion of the Indian Space Research Organization, multiple satellite projects, the launch vehicle program, and more. However, beyond all these sterling achievements, people will always remember him as a true leader who put his team ahead during success and put himself in the line of fire during setbacks. An inspirational leader, Professor Dhawan, had the unique quality of galvanizing young scientists and creating leaders out of them. He encouraged people to think beyond narrow silos and strived tirelessly to ensure that all efforts were coordinated and channelized towards the attainment of a common goal. Drawing inspiration from the efforts of visionaries like Professor Dhawan, we have taken measures to open up the space sector and encourage participation of various stakeholders in the sector. It will further India's prowess in the competitive space technology domain and help make our nation technologically advanced and self-reliant. As we celebrate the birth centenary of Professor Satish Dhawan, our true tribute to him would be to encourage greater interest among youth in science as a subject and as a profession. I wish the celebrations all success.
This brings to a conclusion this radio report on the function organized earlier today by ISRO to mark the birth centenary year of renowned scientist Professor Satish Dhawan.